Okay, so we're back with Laura Brand, serial killer whisperer, criminologist, and private investigator, PI. And we have another installment of some Bittaker recordings that we're going to talk about. But we have to wait till Cindy turns off her phone.
Sorry.
So we'll wait for her to turn off her phone. And then also, hopefully, Laura got some good news this week, but we're not going to announce anything, but we want to kind of tease everybody. It's really good news that a lot of her people who follow her will be interested in, and hopefully next week we can kind of make that announcement.
I think next week we can make the announcement, and everybody's been begging for Bittaker and Norris, so it's kind of perfect.
Yeah. So it is Bittaker and Norris related.
Yeah.
So we will give you that much. So yeah. So tell me else what's going on with Bittaker these days, as far as like, I know, obviously he's dead. Obviously, but his case still is, unfortunately, lives on because there's still women that we haven't found, and we haven't unfortunately had the time or the resources to go out and do it because there's a lot of logistics involved. And you've been on the East Coast for most of this year.
No, don't say that.
Yeah, don't say it because
Don't say it. She's got a stalker chick. Don't say that.
Okay. All right. I'll cut that out.
Undisclosed place. Yeah.
Okay. So you've been doing your work for the past year, and you've been all over the place. So we haven't had time to really go out and, for lack of a better term, dig in and find these victims. And we came out, and we have some video of this stuff, which we're going to probably post soon to kind of talk about that. But where is the status of Bittaker and his victims?
Well, right now, I mean, you guys were up there when we went to go test the soil.
Yeah.
So we haven't had any news on that, but of course, forensic testing takes a long time. So we're still waiting for the results of that. And we're still looking into, Knott's Berry Farm, Gretchen, everything. Bittaker's PI has given me all of his research on the case, all the notes on that he took on the defense's side. And he actually has a lot more notes than the police discovery, because he was actually started to look into Gretchen and the Knott's Berry Farm, murder before Garber, Bittaker's defense attorney, said, don't go there, don't look there. So
why do you think they did that? Why do you think they said not to look there?
Well, the prosecution can get those notes at any time they wanted to. So if he's digging around, if he's snooping, if they're not looking into it, on the police side, the DA's side, they could start, especially if he uncovers something. So that's why Garber gave the order, like, just don't look, just stop it type of deal.
Because there was something there.
Right.
That's my point. So, I mean, even that proves that, obviously they would have found something had they kept digging.
Yeah.
So did he give you anything new that you hadn't already known?
I haven't gone through all of them yet. I'm just starting to go through just the first couple of pages. I mean, it is wild. He has a lot more detailed notes than the discovery even has.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you've been harping on Knott's Berry Farm for a long time, so I guarantee you that
something will come out.
Something happened there. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe more. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Rodney Alcala was that same month, that same year. The three of them would have all been at Knott's Berry Farm, because Alcala took a girl right outside Knott's Berry Farm too, that same month.
Yeah, we really need to dig into this time period of why this was happening in LA at that time. So many. I mean, it's just so many.
Well, do you think, I mean, what do you think the status of like someone like a Bittaker or a Bittaker in waiting would troll today, like a theme park? I mean, how much do you think that happens?
It is pretty common. I mean, especially for pedophiles. If you look at the pedophile statistics, and we actually have a joke, in the academic world, when they host, a symposium or a conference in Florida, or especially like Orlando, everyone always calls it like the pedo city, because obviously that's where Disneyland is. I mean, Disney World and all those theme parks. And yeah, it's saturated with pedophiles. So just like somebody who might be an arsonist might become a firefighter, sadists go into police work, hospital work, pedophiles are going to go to where the children are. And unfortunately, yeah, amusement parks, that's where they do go to sometimes.
I don't remember. I don't know if this was a rumor, but I remember you reading an article years ago when I had little ones and I would go to theme parks, and especially Disneyland and Disney World, is that there would be human traffickers and pedophiles that would troll these parks, and they would be equipped with like little kids' clothes and hair dye, and they would they would snatch a kid, bring them into the bathroom, dye their hair, change their clothes, and like literally take them from there. And I don't know if that stuff is true, but it's horrifying to even think that like there are people out there preying upon people's children at the happiest place on earth. It just so, and the fact that they did it, we know Bittaker and Laurence would troll the Knott's Berry Farms. Who knows if they went to Disneyland? Did they ever go to like other theme parks, or was it just
that was their main one? But I think so. Yeah, because Bittaker had talked about a water park at points.
They're looking for teenage girls.
Yeah. I mean, what perfect place? Because if you look at the amusement parks, even around probably pre-teenage, like 11, 12, sometimes like the parents, as long as there's a group of kids, can go off on their own. I think like I was a pre-teen when I was allowed in the amusement park by myself, with friends. So, you're getting kids even at a younger age, even before they're hitting teenagers years, there with a group of friends. So they're kind of, away from adults. And, with the kids, even if they're a little kid and they're there with their parents, I mean, sometimes I take Romeo all the time, and with his little friends, and they want to go on one ride, but I'll just watch them from afar. So, it's a perfect opportunity for these predators, these kids, everyone's so excited about the rides and running around, it's easy for a kid to run off. It's easy. They're just easy prey. And if there's a predator there watching, especially coming out of the park, like the Knott's Berry Farm girl was, or the one that Alcala took, I mean, it's the perfect place for them to just quickly take them.
Yeah. I mean, I live near a theme park, and, when my kids were growing up, I mean, when they were like, 12, 13, everybody in the neighborhood would drop them off. You could just drop them off, and then, they would be with a group of kids, and then, or even the water park too. There's a water park close by.
Yeah.
Same thing. But like, I wasn't really thinking. I mean, I was like, be careful, don't talk to strangers, stranger danger. But still, you really don't have any control over anything when they're there.
Right.
You're just hoping that they stay with the group of friends that they're with, and they don't wander off by themselves and get isolated. But I can see how it happens.
I mean, it's better today because you can track the kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's the thing. That's really good that you can stay connected. But when we were growing up, they didn't have that. So
yeah.
No.
And during when Bittaker and Laurence were trolling around, they didn't have anything. So, it's really scary.
And that's, the era back in the 70s, 80s, even early 90s when I was a kid, you were just out the door, in the morning, and you were out until, it was dark or even later, just running around the neighborhood. I mean, it was just how it was. I mean, it was, kids.
But even with all this technology, I mean, it's still happening. People are disappearing.
Right. Exactly.
They have a huge problem up here. There's like a major human trafficking ring up here. They're snatching people, or even women. Happened the other day down the street. They took some woman from the parking lot of a Dollar Tree.
Oh
I mean, it's like, this stuff is going on all the time. They just don't report it every 5 minutes.
Right.
So that's why it's important to understand the signs and to be aware and to know when your instincts are buzzing, pay attention. Because even Bittaker told you that, to trust your instinct.
Every serial killer has said that to me when I was scared to go in the cage with who.
Yeah.
I had asked the other serial killers at San Quentin, what advice do you have for me? And they said, you just got to trust that gut. You have that gut feeling. Rely on the primal instinct, that gut feeling. Yeah. Yeah,
because they're evil intentions. I mean, they're not. You're going to feel it. You're going to feel that heavy negative energy or scary energy from someone.
Yeah. And we're told to like really ignore that, as a child, like be nice to everybody, say yes, of course. We kind of groom children now to actually, deny that primal instinct, that gut feeling. And I think a lot of people do, unfortunately. But if you're just tuned in, yeah, I mean, rely on that. You'll pick up on that energy that you're in danger. You'll know.
Yeah, you'll feel it for sure.
I wanted to kind of go back because last week we had was it TJ Charles, right? That was his name, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was interesting. I mean, he was like the son of one of the main investigators for the Hermosa PD that hunted down Bittaker and was kind of like in the early stages of. So they were seeing what was going on early on. What'd you think about what he had to say, and did it kind of align with a lot of the stuff that Bittaker told you and what you've studied?
Yeah, he was talking about like it was such a small police department, and it was Redondo, Hermosa, Manhattan. I mean, these are very, very small beach communities, and it wasn't a big police force. And they were the ones who put the pieces together with Hermosa and Manhattan kind of working together after the attack on Jan and the attack on Robin. And they were like, okay, something is happening here. But if it wasn't for these cops in these small beach towns, who they would still be out there to this day. I mean, they had no idea there was a serial killer, let alone two, taking these girls, ripping them off the street. And Bittaker had started 20 years earlier. So, it's scary to think what they would have gone on to do if they hadn't, put these pieces together and got them off the street as quickly as they did.
And it was, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it was pretty fast. Bittaker and Norris were running around Redondo Beach, Hermosa, and that Orange County area corridor for what, like a year and a half?
Yeah.
I mean, it is a very small area. Like Hermosa Beach, Redondo Beach, it's like not that big, couple of miles each town.
Right.
It's amazing they were able to get away with it for as long as they did in that tiny little community.
I know.
But luckily it was only a year. Can you imagine?
No, God, if they,
I mean, did they have plans to like go to different areas, or did he ever tell you that?
Oh yeah. I mean, Bittaker had his motel room was filled with chemicals. There was a pound, I have the whole evidence list, but one of the things he had was a pound of cyanide, just to give you, and all different types of acid. And they were planning on using the acid on the eyes and the ears of the next victims.
Oh my God.
So, and then they had they were going to fill squirt guns and give them to kids on the beach. And
I remember you saying that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So they had like a mass murderer mindset of like, they wanted to kill as many people as they could.
Well, it's like, sounds like torture first, then kill.
Torture. Yeah. And I mean, when Joe met with, Norris at the Dunkin' Donuts that morning, remember he drove them to all the girls' houses that he was watching. So, I mean, they already had victims picked out. They had the chemicals. It's like they had the victims picked out, the supplies, the tools, everything. These guys weren't slowing down when they got caught.
Yeah. They were organized.
I mean, it's just like, you can't even wrap your mind around how someone is spending their day doing this. I mean, if you think about like these people are running around plotting all this stuff. You're in your home. You don't know what's going on. Someone's driving by. You have cars driving by with serial rapists, serial killers watching you because you're now on their radar.
Yeah.
As a teenage girl. Imagine how scary that is.
And I mean, the safest those towns are
so safe. They were such small, like little bedroom communities where, everybody gets up at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning, goes to the beach all day. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what you do down there. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's so scary to me. I grew up in a small little beach town. To imagine like this monster driving around all day in this tiny little area. Imagine if Port Jeff, like
easily,
it's the same size.
And the thing is, in Port Jeff, there's like a ferry that goes to another state across the sound like every hour. So you can, with your car. So like, you drive your car, right? You could snatch someone, get on the ferry.
Ugh, don't give people ideas.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Oh my God.
I mean, but that's the whole thing. It's anywhere like that, though. There's so many.
But you feel so safe in those communities. Like, I used to go. My friends had a house in Redondo Beach when I was a teenager. When I'd come out to visit, and I mean, you never thought about these things. This was like the 90s. We didn't think about, we have to be careful or whatever. You're going to the beach with your friends in the summertime.
Right. You're always outside. You're always at the beach. And I remember when I went to Cindy's abduction point and Andrea's, that were both Redondo Beach. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking around. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like the safest little like bungalow beach houses, a residential neighborhood, like picture perfect. Almost like
when Cindy was walking back from church, right?
Yeah.
Did anyone see anything? No one saw. There were any witnesses or anything?
There was Bittaker recalls a guy barbecuing. I don't think he was in the front yard, but he was like the side of the backyard. And I don't even think Bittaker saw him. I think it was in one of the reports. This guy who was barbecuing heard a quick little scream and then nothing. So he didn't think anything of it.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Well, all right. You send us a little recording here, like a 15-minute recording.
Yeah.
This is it's kind of like a mixed bag here of one of your. This is a conversation you had like early on. Where and what stage?
No, I think this was later on with this recording. I know I jumped deeper into his sexual fantasy in this one, and I think he's talking about the Ledford tape in the beginning. I'm trying to remember. It's been years, but
okay.
Yeah,
all right, well, let's listen to it and we'll stop and we'll talk about it.
Wait, before you start, Laura, did we talk about the archetype of Bittaker?
I think we did.
Not yet, because I haven't gone over him.
All right, well, let's listen. We can kind of talk about
the archetype because we haven't gotten. He's number 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect at this time.
Okay. You there?
Yeah, I'm here. Like I'm going to go anywhere.
So, there's a couple questions about the discovery I wanted to ask you and go over because some of it's like really contradictory.
Gee, really?
So there's a couple different reports about the Gilliam tape that was taken. So one report says that it was like 3 girls in the room. I think Christina Drayle was one of the ones who said she was in the room listening. And now I'm just reading another report. It was it's some teenage guys who were there with their girlfriends saying that it was them with their girlfriends listening to the tape as well. Was the tape played like more than once?
Yeah. It's kind of hard to say the tape was played at all because all I did was it was just a few seconds of Gilliam responding as I prompted her to, stick it to me sort of thing. So that was all they heard. And I don't think there's like remember what's the first girl?
Cindy?
No, the first witness you just mentioned.
Christina?
Drayle. I don't think I ever played it for her. Just this was set when there were several kids in the visiting.
What?
It's really nothing significant. You can't draw any conclusions from it because I didn't play enough. Although I think they're claiming they heard various things, but they're just making that up or mistaken. It's just I wasn't going to do something like that when I went to witnesses. Put something on with somebody screaming. That'd be goofy enough. Naturally, that's crazy.
All right, stop for a second.
No, and
what is he talking about?
We're talking about the Gilliam tape.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, one of the first people we had on was Dina. And she is one of the teenagers who did hear the Gilliam tape.
Mm-hmm.
And we've also played my interview with Valerie. She's another teenager who heard the Gilliam tape. Unfortunately, she passed away, but we did play her recording, my interview with her. There were a couple other, Tina Forconi, she passed away, but we also played her witness statement on the podcast. All of them have heard this Gilliam tape that he made. It was Jackie Gilliam and Leah Lamb who were abducted out of, North Redondo Beach.
Mm-hmm.
They jumped out in front of the tennis courts is what they're really known for.
Yep.
Bittaker had taken a tape of Jackie Gilliam because he wanted a recording of a rape of a virgin. And this tape we're talking about, yeah. And like I said, Tina, Valerie, and Dina have all heard this tape, the Gilliam tape. What's interesting about this Gilliam tape is it's never been recovered. It's one of the ones he buried in the evidence that we're looking for.
And he's saying he didn't play it for people.
He's like half-assing, saying like,
right.
Well, I played a few lines.
Right. And what was his reason for doing that? Just to kind of get control over them, to torture them?
Yeah.
To scare them?
He was trying to like kind of prime them to see their reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was getting, at that point, I mean, he was like really pushing the envelope, like the boundaries to see what he could reveal to them. Who knows? Maybe like, oh, that's cool or something like that. Or maybe he can indoctrinate one of them to be part of his team, like him and Roy Norris. They can use that girl to have them as like, she can be the lure for other victims.
100%. And I think he was already doing that with some of the teenage boys, was already like exposing.
I had a feeling that he was doing that with the teenage boys, that they didn't really understand what was going on.
It's almost like a drug dealer. Like, he's like, bring your friends, like that,
Exactly. And I think he was grooming the girls, whether he was going to bring them in as like bait, like, Ing and Lake did with, Cricket, or whether he was going to take them as a victim. Yeah, I think this was all priming. It's no different from when, we had serial killer Exxon, and I get in my car every time and he goes, honk the horn. And I go, here, I already know where this is going. I'm going to honk the horn, run over a dead animal. Then you're going to tell me to run over a live animal. It starts off so innocent, and it just keeps building and building from there. And they're just priming and grooming and seeing, what your reaction is.
Crazy. All right, let's keep on going.
They said in the report, they're like, it sounded like you were, what did you just say? Scripting her, I guess.
Yeah, it wasn't a very emotional statement. Just kind of saying the words, and I don't even remember exactly which words, but.
What do you remember? What you asked her to say?
Remember what I who?
Do you remember what you asked Jackie to say?
No, I just said, don't remember the exact words. It was just, something along the lines of, pretend you're having fun, it'll be over quicker. That's, it was so sort of meaningless that, they
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
People just latched on to something they thought was significant and kind of blew it out of proportions.
And it was true that she just went along with everything, right? She didn't really fight back.
Oh, no. Nobody actually fought back as far as the sex that was involved. No, there was never any. Let's say the only one that really put up a fight was number 2, Hall. But Roy was overcoming her physically, although he said he had a hard time. So much for him being SEAL. But, no, once they were captives, as it were, they were all cooperative. It wasn't like I was really worried about them running away or trying to or doing anything else. Remember seeing the I don't know if you saw them or not, pictures say Gilliam's got some nylon strapping tape between her hands.
Yeah.
But those, I left 3 feet or so between them. It was just a psychological restraint, didn't really impede their motions, and their legs were free. They could have tried to run off and, all sorts of times.
Stop.
They didn't.
Stop it.
They were essentially cooperative as much as you can,
Yeah, no, that's not true. I've seen the pictures of Gilliam, and her hands are duct tied. I mean, wrapped so tightly, and so are her ankles. Like,
yeah, she was athletic. She would have ran.
Oh yeah, all the girls were. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you saw the way they bondaged them, there was no way they could even move.
So you think that just is memory fading, or is it just something?
No, he's playing games.
Or is he playing games?
The severity of it, like, oh, her legs are free, and
right. He doesn't want him to sound like he is who he is. He's trying to pretend. Yeah. Oh well, maybe they kind of wanted it,
Yeah.
Like let's they could have escaped if they really wanted to.
No, they wanted
bullshit. If they wanted to escape, if they were able to escape, they were going to escape.
Right.
Like, no one wanted to stay with this creep.
Yeah, and I don't know, probably nobody caught this, but he said so much for him being a SEAL, and he was talking about Norris. Norris had said in prison and to everybody that he was a Navy SEAL. He wasn't, and he never saw combat, and he was kicked out for when he did go over to Vietnam. He was sexually assaulting the natives over there.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting how like.
So wait. What did he mean? So much for him being a SEAL,
Navy SEAL.
No, I know, but what does that have to do with the girls?
He was talking about how Andrea beat him up. So he said so much for him being a Navy, like so much for him being a SEAL with Andrea who beat him up. And she did. She really, really got him good. There were 2 girls they had picked up right after Andrea. And it says it right here in a report I have from Bittaker and Norris in a statement that these 2 girls got in the car and they were athletic looking, and Bittaker gave him the signal to go get them. And he said, no, he was like, not after Andrea. He got scared. He goes, they look athletic like her. So Andrea saved 2 girls' lives for fighting back.
Wow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's interesting though, how like Bittaker kind of like diminishes and you go, oh yeah, they didn't fight. And they, not even especially during sex and stuff like that. And they weren't tied up. You have him kind of basically glossing over it and kind of trying to, and then we talk to serial killer X who does the complete opposite.
Right.
Gives you all the information, all the stuff, the unvarnished, like he doesn't care.
So what is that? Why did Bittaker want to gloss it over and pretend that it wasn't as bad as it was, or that they actually wanted him? Is that just his ego, or he doesn't want you to know, or what? What's going on there?
No, I think he's just, trying to play it down. I think in his mind, he's still living in this fantasy world to a degree that, they wanted to be in this van with him and still playing into that fantasy. And the more he diminishes, this was a capture, this was a rape, this was a horrific murder, still hanging on to that. And I think a lot of it also goes back to, he had a lot of anger towards Norris for testifying against him, and him going on death row, and Norris gets the deal. And can go up for parole. He's went up for parole. So there's a lot of that too. And I think, especially with Bittaker, this is his time. He's finally speaking. So I think a lot of it too is there are a lot of goes at Norris, a lot of anger coming out of Norris and wanting him to look like the bad one.
Right. Yeah.
Which
and he knows that you're documenting all this and it's going to get out. So it's revisionist, theory and history.
Yeah.
So
you can hear it in some of the tapes. Like when you ever hear like me go, Larry, Laura, that was my signal to him to like cut the bullshit. Like,
right.
Exactly.
Stop pretending that this is.
Because you'll hear it in the tapes.
There was a lot of Larrys, by the way.
There's a lot of Larrys. Yeah.
Larry.
Come on.
Right. Seriously. Come on.
It's ridiculous.
It's totally ridiculous. Like what? Is it people stupid? If the girls could escape, they would have escaped. They didn't want to be with you, old creep, trying to hurt them.
Exactly.
Say that.
What do you mean by like psychological restraint? Like it was just to
psychological. I wasn't going to tie her up so she couldn't even walk or something. I didn't want her hands to be all bound together, and it was just. I figured it was just psychological, and it worked. Nobody ever, got upset by it, as it were.
Pause it right here. So he might not be explaining this in the tape, but what he means by a lot of psychological bonding is what he's referring to is you put a gun to someone's head and you say, if you move, I'm going to blow your skull, wide open. If you move even 1 foot, I'm going to slit your throat. Like if you move, you see that toolbox, I am going to take out every single tool and use it on every different part of your body. Do you hear me? And then show him the tools. So he's saying he used a lot of psychological, bonding.
Restraints.
Right. And this is what he's referring to, but that's really what it is. Yeah, they didn't escape. They used a lot of that. Yeah, because they were scared to death for their lives. So I just wanted to explain that for everybody.
Okay.
Listening.
So if you found the victims, right, but you had the fantasy of it being like a girlfriend-boyfriend loving relationship, wouldn't like the binds and the the binds with the tape, wouldn't that destroy the fantasy?
No, I was just doing the best I could under adverse conditions that I didn't really like at all. It's just, it wasn't really planned. It was just done. It was, well, okay, now we got her. What do we do with her? So, I just keep saying again and again, there was no real planning involved in all this. There was no sit down, okay, we get a victim. How do we get them? Where do we take them? What do we do once we got them? How do we, it's just, there was none of that. You just, okay, there's the girl, okay, we happen to run across, all right, go ahead, get her.
I mean, I beg to differ where he said there's no planning involved, because they had a murder van that they designed for this capture. So they basically had an implement to capture them. They had the doors were locked, only can be locked from the outside.
Right.
I mean, they had all these tools, they had all these things that they needed. So maybe they weren't planning in the moment, but they were prepared. It's like they were going out fishing. They went out in their boat. They had their rods, their reels, they had their lures.
Right.
And so when they went out fishing, fishermen plan. They plan ahead of time, So that's kind of like bullshit.
That's the perfect analogy. Yeah, going out like fishing, but yeah, exactly. So. There's a lot of planning. A lot. I mean,
a lot of thought.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure they had conversations while they're in the van, while they're trawling. Says, well, if I do this, you got to do that. And if I do this, if I give you this thing, like sign, I'm sure they had all this kind of unwritten, kind of rehearsed routine that they would do in case so-and-so, if she started to run, do you run after her? Do you let her go? Or, do you tackle her or that kind of thing? I'm sure they planned all that stuff out.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. I thought it was really interesting in that part where he says adverse conditions. That's how he describes it. Adverse conditions. Yeah.
Very clinical.
Yeah.
Weirdo.
I think I want to go into the sexual fantasy of the underground. I think that's what I really want to explore. And I think that's what, the researchers are going to want to explore, because everything is going to go back to the sexualized fantasy, I mean, I think that's going to be the key to everything, is understanding that fantasy. And that's what's really going to show us the most. So just explain it to me. Like, you wanted the underground lair.
Mm-hmm.
So the girls, was it a girl or girls? Was there going to be more than one, or is it going to be multiple?
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
One or more. I wasn't that specific about it. I would be happy with one nice one.
So if the girl woke up, she would have to have no memory of getting.
So basically, he's trying to pretend he just did this because he wanted to have one woman to love him.
Yeah.
Poor monster. Nobody loved him.
I thought it was interesting. I didn't remember this part from before. What he actually says, victim. He says victim. So he knows what he's doing is wrong.
Right.
Oh, absolutely.
Right there. Yeah.
It's all orchestrated and premeditated and thought out very well.
I remember we talked about his lair and that place that we still have to go up to, near that lake, where the cave, and how they brought tools up there to kind of fashion it. Like, I think, like, what you should put like a, cement a chain into the side of the rock.
They were trying to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they were like, really, so once again, this is stuff that they were really planning out. And
another part, not even aside from the chemicals, is Bittaker was making a ton of money. So he was actually going to have Norris quit his job and full-time work on the lair, building the lair. And even Joe Jackson, when he first came in for that interview, he goes, he tells the police this. He goes, he wants to build this. I've seen the floor plan, the blueprints, everything. And Norris is going to quit his job and do it. And he said to the cops, I know how crazy it sounds, but you don't understand the level of intelligence of this guy. If anybody could actually do this, it's him. And I mean, it's not even that hard. I mean, look at Lake and It with their book.
Right.
I mean, that's why I always say for sexual sadists, they're like prairie dogs. They're always burrowing. You know, look down, look at the basements, look in, you know, the dungeons. It's always like underground stuff, underground layers. They love to go
No windows, soundproof, someplace where, you know.
Yep.
You know.
Because metaphorically in their brain, they're trying to like create this.
Creating their hedonism, I always say.
Right. Underworld.
Right.
Kooky.
It's evil.
Thing there. How did you plan to like get her there?
It wouldn't necessarily be no memory because she I figure so I figure out some way to say gas her in the middle of the night and she doesn't even know it happens. And then I keep her unconscious until, you know, however later it takes me to get her to the hideaway. She wakes up by herself, and then I talk to her later and explain how she got there and why. And it couldn't be a forceful type thing because I wanted her to fall in love with me later on, you know, as soon as possible. So couldn't have any negative connotations or effects. We were both prisoners.
Oh, right. So for that, you would have had to, I mean, for that to would have worked, you would have had to go into her bedroom at night.
We'd have to what?
You would have had to go into her bedroom at night.
Yeah, wherever she happened to be living. Remember, this is all fantasy. You know, it wasn't a matter of, you know, how reasonable this was. It was just a fantasy. Something like what I explained could theoretically work, but it would be hard to do. It would take finances, you know, equipment, material, you know. It was just a simple fantasy.
Right.
But it was
I mean, let's play into it. No, I know. Let's play into this fantasy and let's just like pretend that you did have all these resources and money for this to actually happen. If we go into that, so let's say, okay, so you go into her bedroom, you gas her, you get her downstairs.
This call and your telephone number will be monitored and recorded.
You finally go up to her. You finally tell her, you know, we're both prisoners down here. I mean, I guess, tell me like the story you would tell her.
The basic story was some alien beings, specified as the size, shape, and so on, had some sort of disaster in their worlds. They needed new blood genes, whatever. And so they come down here to get some people to go out there and repopulate their planets. So they kidnapped both of us for whatever reason. And why they picked us out, I don't know. But okay, we're here. And then I had a certain amount of equipment that I could probably convince her we were actually flying around somewhere. Like, you know the centrifuges where they test the astronauts and things, that swinging the arm around and around with a little cage on the end of it with, you know, equipment and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I would build something like that, and I could put her in there without her seeing the whole thing, just going from one room to another, as it were, down a short hallway. We're in there, that's the control panel, and by letting it slowly speed up, you would get to a point where you could turn the thing, and you would feel the accelerations and so on, like you were actually flying around in a plane. And, you know, there was no real logic to it. It was just fantasy.
Yeah, he had. Oh my God. It's interesting how he really kind of filled in this narrative of hoping that if he created this narrative, that they would like fall for him. Mm-hmm. It's really kind of pathetic that he would go through these mental gymnastics in order to justify what he was doing, and then maybe in his own mind thinking that if they believe this, then maybe they'll want him. If you know, if he's like captured with them, convince him. It's like, it's really bizarre.
What is it, Laura? What is all this?
It's very like, you know.
I mean, is it real? Like he really thinks that that's the thing, or is this just a story he's telling you?
No, I think this is real. I mean, we've
Yeah,
talked.
it sounds very real to him.
Very real to him. And you can see this actually is a perfect tape because I go, okay, what's the story you're going to tell? And he kind of goes, oh, well, acting like he's coming up with it on the spot. And then he starts talking. And that's when you kind of sit back and go, oh, wow, he's thought about this a lot, a lot. And then he goes into just how detailed it is. And then he starts talking about that thing from NASA he was going to build and how he would build it and how it would feel like they're in a plane and flying. And then you could do this. And he keeps going and going. And this tape really shows just how methodical he is.
Right.
It really does. And it's scary at the level when he's like, how he's literally working this. I'm going to have it so it suspend us. And it feels like this. And I could build it this way. And you see just like his brain and how it works, it comes out, and he's just so methodical in such an evil way, and how much planning he has done with just his fantasy, let alone the crimes itself.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that he's got this hard line between his fantasy and reality, and the fantasy is like the space thing and trying to convince her that she's with him and they're together and they're not, and then you have the other side is like, well, I'm just going to kill her. I'm going to rape her and kill her. That's like the primal side, because I know that's not going to happen. My fantasy's never going to happen. So I have to dispose. She's not going to find out anything. It's really weird how there's like a hard line between the two.
And the thing is with sexual sadists too, is a lot of their times, as crazy as it may sound, they're they're not aiming to kill. They actually do not want to kill the victim. They are looking for a play toy to torture. And usually when they do get killed, it's because of just from the torture, or they've just finished with their play toy, type of deal. And the play toy is half dead, so they'll kill him. But yeah, they do like to keep their victims alive for as long as possible until death does occur.
Yeah. And then they have no choice but to cover it up after that and take care of it. Bizarro.
Take a hell of a lot of resources and money, so
If you had like the resources and the money, do you think you could have built that?
That's pretty unlikely, but I could always build it to some scale or another. Might not be very as big as I was talking about, which was something like 100 yards long. So I'd have our own indoor rifle range. But, I'm a person that got nothing to do. I'm just so I don't know, out of it. Just something to think up and makes an interesting fantasy to think about.
What did it look like? Like when you built it in your mind? Like, was there like a bathroom? Was there like a bedroom? Like, what did it look like?
All sorts of things. Swimming pool, one of them. I'm talking about a building that's at least 1 floor, possibly 2, 100 yards long, and say roughly 50 yards wide. And assuming I've got that much money to build something like that, then it's got anything in it I want, a machine shop, chemistry lab. I was also thinking about going up and helping a bunch of boys escape from some sort of detention facility and raising them, as it were, and they could work with me, help me,
yeah,
whatever I might like.
So that goes back to his childhood.
Well, no, that's him grooming other boys. He said he's
right.
Get the juvies out, and raise them, train them, groom them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, wasn't he in a detention center?
He was. That's how he found out about San Gabriel. He was fighting fires at Youth Authority up in San Gabriel Mountains.
That's what I'm saying. So like now, so he's still stuck as that age also. Like I'm going to take those boys.
Emotional development you can is stunted from that age. You can tell by just that, but also the age of the victims. And I know we've talked about Youth Authority a lot too, because serial killer X was in Youth Authority, also in San Gabriel Mountain. Ed Kemper was in Youth Authority, and Manson, Shootman was the other guy we've talked about connected to this case. There's a big correlation with Youth Authority with these guys too. I don't think they knew at the time when they're telling them to go up in these mountains and they learn all these fire trails and mountain terrain that all these guys were going to later go on to use it as their playground.
No, if anything, they're hoping that something positive comes out of them being outside and helping and doing stuff like that and being close to nature. But these guys are, some of these guys, and I'm sure maybe some of them it did click that way, and they didn't, that was enough to kind of keep them from a life of crime. Others were banking that information and saying, "Oh, this is a good place to take someone if I have to hide somebody."
Right.
And
if you notice, he said 100 yards twice in the last. He scaled it. He's actually scaled it. Yeah, of how much room he would actually need for this.
I'm surprised he didn't. I mean, he was so. I mean, Norris was kind of like his kind of sidekick in a way, like mentally. But I'm surprised they didn't find some structure or warehouse or somewhere in, because there's a lot of that in the valley, in there, in that area, a lot of like an industrial spot.
Oh, I guess it would have to. I guess how isolated it was. They took the girls. I mean, they like the mountains, and a lot of serial killers like the mountains because they can scream. And even if she escapes, say a victim escapes, you're in the mountains. You know what I mean?
You can't go anywhere.
If you're in a warehouse somewhere, somebody screams, somebody could call the cops. That victim gets out, somebody could look what happened to Jeffrey Dahmer when his victim, unfortunately, the cops returned him to Jeffrey Dahmer. But I mean, that's the whole line of thinking with the mountains is if one gets out,
where are they going to go?
Right. And they want them.
And it is so desolate out there. There's nothing.
Right.
I mean, even today, there's nothing. Can you imagine back then? I mean, there's no, you can barely get cell service. It's like really desolate area.
Nothing.
Mountain range. That's where a lot of the fires, the back end of the fires happened.
Yeah. All right, we just got like about a minute and a half left to see what he has to say.
Okay.
Well, I do. It was just sort of an unlimited fantasy.
That's very, very interesting. What?
Kind of.
What about if the girl you keep saying you guys are prisoners, right? And these aliens are taking over. Now she would never see the aliens. What if she had started getting suspicious of that? Did you think of a way to explain it to her?
The PA system drowned that out. Say that again.
I said, so you're underground and you're both captive by these aliens. Now she's never going to see the aliens. Did you ever think ahead of when she?
I never supposedly saw them either. So I could make up a story that what I did see was allowed to see. And in the beginning, I'd have to have some sort of mechanical robot to go feed her occasionally until we finally get together. So go ahead.
So there was going to be a robot that came in and to feed her?
Supposedly me too. I've got a cell Jason or nearby, or she's got her own. And like here, it's got a food port. They come feed you whatever 3 times a day. And
you have 60 seconds remaining.
Just bring an alien in. Gotta figure out some sort of way to get around that.
What if?
That was pretty. There's only 5 seconds left, so it's really.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind when he was telling you that? Because this is kind of a while ago. This is kind of in the beginning stages of your research, and I mean, I don't know how I would. I mean, I'm listening to now. I'm like, this is crazy.
It's wild. And I've never. He's the only not even sexual sadist, just serial killer. I'll explore their sexual fantasies, and none have ever been anywhere near this level of detail.
Yeah,
and
the detail is scary.
Detail is what just jumps in how methodical he is and the way he's thought about everything and mapped everything out. But then on top of it, you're just I'm listening to this and I kept thinking the movie Cloverfield. But then, like you said in the beginning, Rob, you're how gory does this get? And I go, it's not. There's literally aliens and robots. And so you're kind of hearing that is this is so out there but it also reminds me of a teenage boy, or maybe even younger than a teenage boy.
Yeah.
Really, because
Yeah, it does. It sounds like a
preteen, like a preteen, like space fantasy.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And the way he tells it is like a kid telling a story, and he's remembered some of the things he's talked about, but then he's making things up on the fly.
Right.
And then there was a robot, and the robot would feed us, and then and then the aliens, and it's like it just seems so childlike.
It is childlike, yeah. But then it's like you have this guy with the 38 IQ who's like mapping it out, and he is a serial killer, and then but it's like mixed with like this little boy's like emotional intelligence. So it's just such a weird dichotomy, like all coming together and just listening to all of it. I mean, it's really is wild.
Mm-hmm. I agree. It is crazy listening to that.
Did he ever come back, and did you guys ever revisit this?
Oh yeah,
lots of times.
Lots of times. Yeah, I think there's the tape after this. We even go deeper.
Yeah.
Save for maybe next week.
Yeah. It's
very bizarre.
I can't believe you were able to get him to talk about all this stuff.
I know, it's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, what is some of the Alan White? What does he think? Has he ever heard any of this stuff?
I've told him about this. I don't know if he's listened to this tape or the ones where he's describing the fantasy. I know I've told him like, I want you to hear these tapes about this fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure he's experienced it with the mountains of people that he's spoken to too. But it's like, it's kind of like, it's like a psychological Easter egg into a serial killer's.
It really is.
What they're thinking, because and plus at this point he's had all this time to think about it, and he still retains all this information because at that point he's been in prison for 20 some odd years.
Yeah.
If not longer, and you're tapping into something that he really, because it's very vivid. It's like he hasn't forgotten this stuff.
Yeah.
It's a very deep-seated fantasy memory.
And he said he developed this fantasy around 19.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when he was first like locked up.
Wow. So it's all these years later.
Yeah, and he was in his 70s when he
right.
tape, and he developed
That's
it.
what I'm saying. Like this is something deep seated for this man. Like he.
Yeah, no, it's ingrained into his psyche and his memories, and it's almost like you can tell he's like reliving it, and when he's telling it to you.
Yeah,
he's not reluctant. A lot of times when you in these conversations, he's reluctant on revealing information, but he was just telling you the whole story.
Yeah. Now imagine like on San Quentin's death row, you have him sitting at a table with Douglas Clark talking about pony girls. He's talking about this. They had alcohol at the table. They had craft at the table. And I mean, this was the stuff they would talk about. Just sit there and talk about. Yeah.
Because that was a little group of...
Their serial killer coffee club.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't even imagine. And they're all probably trying to one-up each other.
Yeah. With their stories. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Bizarro. Totally bizarro.
Yeah.
Well.
All right, Laura. Thank you.
Yeah. Till next week, we can do
Till next week.
All righty.
All right. We'll see you next week.
See you next week.